The old thinking also told us that the challenges of the world were too big and our country too small to make a difference. But thanks to our leadership around the world, development spending is now heading towards the UN goal of 0.7% of gross domestic product. 40 million more children are going to school each day, and 200 million are protected from malaria. I tell you, conference, that would never have happened without the leadership of Gordon Brown as Chancellor and then as Prime Minister. So Tony and Gordon had the courage to take on established attitudes and institutions in Britain. It is that courage that made us such a successful political force. But our journey must also understand, as I said, where we went wrong. I tell you, I believe that Britain is fairer and stronger than it was 13 years ago. But we have to ask this question: how did a party with such a record lose 5 million votes between 1997 and 2010? It didn't happen by accident. The hard truth for all of us in this hall is that a party that started out taking on old thinking became trapped by its own certainties. The world was changing all around us, from global finance to immigration to terrorism. New Labour, a political force founded on its ability to adapt and change, lost its ability to do so. The reason was that too often we bought old established ways of thinking, and over time, I'm afraid, we looked more and more like a new establishment. Let me say to the country, you saw the worst financial crisis in a generation, and I understand your anger that Labour hadn't changed the old ways in the city of deregulation. You warned us about your concerns about immigration and the impact on communities, and I understand your frustration that we didn't seem to be on your side. And when you wanted to make it possible for your kids to get on in life, I understand why you felt we were stuck in old thinking about higher and higher levels of personal debt, including tuition fees. You saw jobs disappear and economic security undermined, and I understand your anger at a Labour government that claimed it could end boom and bust. And I understand also that the promise of new politics of 1997 came to look incredibly hollow after the scandal of MPs' expenses. And we came to look like a new establishment in the company we kept, the style of our politics, and our remoteness from people. I stand before you clear in my task to once again make Labour a force that takes on established thinking, doesn't succumb to it, that speaks for the majority and shapes the centre ground of politics. And I tell you this, if we are not this party, nobody will be. This new generation that leads our party is humble about our past and idealistic about our future. It is a generation that will always stand up for the mainstream majority. And it is a generation that will fight for the centre ground, not allow it to be dominated or defined by our opponents. And it is a generation which thirsts for change. This week we embark on the journey back to power. It will be a long journey, involving hard thinking for our party. We do not start that journey by claiming we know all the answers now. We do so by setting a direction of change. Let me tell you what kind of country I want us to build together. This generation wants to change our economy so it works better for all working people and not just a few at the top. This generation wants to change our society so it values community and family, not just work, because we understand there is more to life than the bottom line. This generation wants to change the way government works, because we know it can be stifling and frustrating and unaccountable. This generation also wants to change our foreign policy so it's always based on our values, not just our alliances. And this generation knows very profoundly that to change Britain, we need a new politics. Above all, I lead a new generation not bound by fear or the ghosts of the past. As we emerge from the global economic crisis, we face a choice. We can return to business as usual, or we can challenge old thinking to build a new economy. Let me say to you very plainly, I believe strongly we need to reduce the deficit. There will be cuts, and there would have been if we had been in government. Some of them will be painful, and would have been if we had been in government. I won't oppose every cut the coalition proposes. There will be some things the coalition does that we won't like as a party, but we'll have to support. And come the next election, there'll be some things they have done that I'll want to reverse, but won't be able to. I say this to you very honestly, because the fiscal credibility we earned before 1997 was hard-won, and we must win it back by the time of the next general election. I'm serious about reducing our deficit, but I'm also serious about doing it in a way that learns the basic lessons of economics, fairness, and history. Economics teaches us that at a time of recession, governments run up deficits. We were too exposed as an economy to financial services, so the impact of the crash on the public finances was deeper on us than on others. We should take responsibility for not building a more resilient economy. But what we should not do, and I say this very clearly to the country, is make a bad situation worse by embarking on deficit reduction at a pace and at a scale that endangers our economic recovery. The starting point for a responsible plan is to halve the deficit over 4 years. But growth is our priority, and we must remain vigilant against a downturn. You see, it's obvious, really. When you cancel thousands of new school buildings at a stroke, it's not just bad for our kids, it's bad for construction companies at a time when their order books are empty. It's not responsible, it's irresponsible. When you deprive Sheffield Forge masters of a loan, from which government would be paid back, you deprive Britain of the ability to lead the world in new technology. It's not responsible, it's irresponsible, and we should say so. And when you reduce your economic policy simply to deficit reduction alone, you leave Britain without a plan for growth, which is what this government has done. No plan for growth means no credible plan for deficit reduction.